I've now started work on colouring the dial up. The original, there are 3 or 4 different versions of them. The very first clocks that were made had plain black dials. The dial plate had no decoration on at all, and they had brass spandrels in each corner and a chapter ring, of course. The clock that was in Harrison's house, which is a well-known one, which is in the Science Museum, has a background painted much like this. I'm not sure, to be quite honest, if this is the one from there or from the Leeds Museum, but anyway, there are several versions of it, all much the same. The artwork is reasonably crudely done, which is fortunate, because for copying it, it makes it a lot easier, because you can have a fairly rough sort of effect and still not be a long way from how it was originally. You can see it's basically scroll designs. There are 2 what are called putty, like little cherubs here, and 2 faces on either side at the top. And on the larger dials with the arch in, this is the second, and the in the archway at the top is the month wheel window, and I have obviously not got an arch, so I have to put the window, and it comes in pretty well spot on where the signature is there. The artwork was originally done in gold leaf and has rubbed off quite a lot in places. In fact, some of it's quite difficult to make out exactly what was there. So I filled in bits that were missing and difficult to see so that I could trace over it. And I decided the best method to use was to use white tracing paper, which is what this is, and it works just like carbon paper, but gives a white background or a white tracing of what you're doing. And the actual type that I used is called Trace Down, and that works very well. It gives quite a good coverage when you lift off the tracing when it's finished, and it doesn't rub off very easily. So from my point of view, that is a good solution. One problem I had was that the background, the matte background here, I made the mistake of putting clear coat on it, and the glue doesn't like taking to the clear coat very well, so I had to rough it up after having done the artwork, and I used a fiberglass brush. These are like bristles of fiberglass at the end, just enough to scuff the surface up, no more than that. If I was doing this again and it was a plain sheet, then I would probably scuff it up with Scotch-Brite over the whole sheet, but being very careful not to go down too far into the depth of the coat of paint. So what I did was I used the best artwork I could find. Some of it's available on the internet, some was from other sources that I got, and I blew it up on my computer, and I can fortunately print A3 in my printer, so this is as large a size I could get onto A3, and it's just slightly small, just very slightly small, so I will be using this, but the spandrels I need to make sure are fitted slightly into the corner. It won't be noticeable because it's so close to being the right size. The centre of it, I made up a separate template which I could fit into place with sellotape in and then trace round all the artwork just using an ordinary pencil over the top of my markings, and you can see on the back here where that has transferred onto the plate. Now underneath is how far I've currently got. The artwork has come out really quite well, better than I thought it would. The gold leafing is quite difficult, and I'm only an amateur. I've not done it before, and it was far from easy. I found on the internet gold leaf size, which is specially made for gold and silver leaf. It's acrylic adhesive. It says allow to dry for 20 minutes and then you can use 24 hours. I found I needed to use it a lot quicker than that, and also not let it there for more than an hour or so. The gold leaf comes in little folders, and these are 100 sheets that cost about £10 off the internet, and it's quite useful because I can only do a small area at a time, so that works quite well. And that's the gold leaf. It's very fragile and you don't want any air currents blowing around because it go all over the place. It's very messy when you do it because you end up with gold leaf scattered everywhere. And the technique I've used is to, as I say, to scuff up the areas, particularly where it's going to be solid, there, and right up to the edge of where I've got my stencil marking. More or less like that, and just do that bit there just so you can see. And that's obviously going to be covered up by another clear coat I'll put over the top when it's finished. And having done that, I then paint with a paintbrush the size on with a nice fine line, or as fine as I can get it, round the outside first, and then filling in the space in the middle. And when that's finished, it goes, you just look at it under the light, and the moment it goes so that there's no shininess to it, it's gone matte, then you can just touch it with the back of your hand if you want, and if it sticks then you know that that's reached the setting point to be able to use it. And that works better now. I've kind of got used to it. The other thing is the edges are very difficult to get smooth, and I found in the end the best method is to not worry too much about having the lines absolutely perfect up to the edges. Go slightly over them and then clean them up with the razor blade afterwards. And if you don't score it too hard, you don't go into the black background. Some of this I haven't finished tidying up yet, but it gives the overall impression of where I've got to. The only thing you have to just bear in mind, as I say, is that I'm not an expert. I've only ever done this once, and this is it. And you'll probably be in the same position. So it was originally done, probably might even have been by the Harrisons themselves, because a use of gold leaf wasn't uncommon amongst carpenters, even today. So not perfect, but as far as I'm concerned, it's probably as good as I'm going to be able to achieve. So I'll do a little bit more, get all this ready, and then I'll show you putting the gold leaf on. I've scraped out the inside where there's areas to be filled with the gold, and I've just lightly touched up the bits that are outlines, and I've got up to here. So that will just nicely fit one piece of gold leaf. So I'll now glue that in and show you what it looks like when it's glued. I've now gone over this area with the size. Just make sure I've done that little bit there. And you can see it's still glinting slightly because that area there is wet still, and there's some odd bits here that are still a little bit wet. But it won't be long before I'm able to try and put the gold leaf on, and I can show you how that works. I've now overlaid the gold leaf. Just brush away the areas that are loose, leaving the bits that are stuck. Really need to burnish that with a bit of the paper. Make sure it's stuck nicely. Right, I'm making some progress. And you can see here that this is how the original was finished. It's a bird that's sitting up here, and then a downwards facing fruit with leaves, and then an upwards facing fruit with leaves, and then just some leaves on that curlicue there. So I'll get out my scalpel in a minute and just scrape round the edges, and I'll come back when that's done. Right, I've tidied that up now, and as far as I'm concerned, that's probably about as good as I can do. Any bits of gold leaf that get missing, it's quite easy to add a little bit. I'd missed a bit off the tip of this wing, just put a little bit of size on there and another bit of gold leaf on the top. So yeah, that's that little section done. I'll next do that bit, and then I can go over to the other side and start over there, and I'll give you some more shots of that just so that you can see how it progresses. I prepared the putty on this side, the little cherub. That's all got glue on ready, so I need to get my gold leaf. I need the biggest possible sheet I can get. I won't use one that's been partly started. Let's do a virgin one. Now the problem is I don't think it's going to be big enough for the whole thing, so I'll lay it on that way round. Right, now the process that I've used is to stir this around until it starts to break up and reveal the thing you're making under your colouring in underneath. The larger pieces are perhaps worth keeping, smaller ones definitely not. It makes a terrible mess. Right, there we go, we're getting somewhere. Now, I've got a slightly stiffer brush that seems to work quite well. And just pick away at some of the surface where it's a bit loose. Idea to have the print of what you're trying to achieve in front of you, so you can see exactly what parts to work on. That's the curl in the front of the hair. Cleaned this one up now. It's not perfect yet, but it gives a pretty good idea of the finished thing. And overall, the more detail I add, the less your eye is drawn to a particular item in it, so it becomes less obvious where the mistakes are and where it perhaps could be done a bit better. But it makes such a difference being in gold leaf. You can see if I turn the light out and then turn the light back on again, it absolutely shines out. So I think I'm pretty pleased with that. That's probably better than I thought I was going to do at one stage. And certainly the best way of doing this for those that are not capable of doing all the artwork perfectly first time is just touching with a little scalpel around the edges to tidy up the little bits and pieces that aren't quite right, and they'll get lost as soon as the clear coat is put on. There is a line around the edge which is going to be for a final row, circular row around the outside before the dial goes on the front, and I can just pop that on now to get show you what it's going to look like in the middle. I say there's a lot going on here, so your eye isn't drawn to the worst parts. So that's where I am now. I just have to work steadily at this. There's no great rush. It's going to take me quite a while to do, but I think it's certainly worth doing in gold leaf. It looks much better. When filming the dial gilding, I had a problem in getting the camera to see properly what I was doing, and my hand unfortunately got in the way a bit, so I'm hoping now I can redo this on a a spare piece of material which I've just got together. This is just a piece of wood, the same as the dial plate. I've just sprayed it black. There's the same artwork I used before, and I'm just going to work on this little area here and get that so that you can see a little bit closer what I actually was doing. So I'll sellotape this down and then come back to you when I'm ready to start the tracing. The tracing can be carried out with either a ballpoint or similar pen or with an HB pencil. I've tried both. Actually, I think probably the ballpoint is slightly easier. I'll just trace around this one here. More of it, that's enough just to give a good idea of how I can then gild this part of it. So I take this off. And that's the outline of what I want to gild. And the next job is to paint in with the size the lines and the areas that I know are filled in completely. I'll just keep this to one side so that I've got it to remind me which bits are filled in and which bits are lines. I'll now paint on the size, and you just have to bear in mind when you do this that anywhere that you leave any glue at all, any size at all, will have the gold leaf stick to it. You need to try and be as careful as you can, and it doesn't really want to be on too thickly either. Just enough is what's needed. Right, that's now painted in. and I have to leave that until it goes off so that there's no shiny bits like here where it's a little bit thick, and there. Just take the worst of those off. Just go and wash my brush out. And the glue has dried up and it's ready for putting the gold leaf on. And I found that you can actually, these are very small squares, they're 2 inches square, and they're actually quite a useful size. I'm not going to get that out in one, so I have to cover it in 2 sections, but don't worry about that, you just overlay them. That's the first part. Where they overlap, you just rub it and this piece will just rub away and it leaves an absolutely tight joint. You don't need to worry about butting them or anything like that. So what I do with this now is I kind of burnish it with my finger before I then do a little bit of burnishing in a slightly stronger way, using this. So just a suitable implement just to make sure it is well rubbed down. Right, now I think I'm in a position where I should just rub it off. And you can see there's, between those 2 sheets, nothing showing except where there's clearly nothing underneath it there. Then I get a second brush. I clearly hadn't got enough glue in underneath it at that point there, and you can see odd little patches where it's wrinkled, and that's clearly where part of it's got to be got to come off. So just to touch it, make a hole in it, and then the brush can work its way through. And you can gradually see the shape coming through. There's a little bit more here. That needs to come off. A little bit more here. Now in an ideal world that should come out so that it's finished, but clearly it's not going to. Now there are certain spots here where I can tidy it up by just touching it with the scraper. It's missing a bit here where the glue's not gone right to the edge and in there, and I didn't glue under here, I remember that. This isn't too well prepared underneath. The paint's very thin, so I'll go probably straight through it. See, I'm just working my way around, smoothing out the lines where they were not very well painted on in the first place. Oops, a little bit of glue's got snagged on there from underneath. And on this one, don't remember now how this works. This arm goes around here. So I put that in like that, and then that goes in there. And this leg comes around here. I've scraped around the edge and just tidied it up a little bit. Unfortunately, the paint's not very hard, and it has just broke. I've finished the dial and fitted it now into the clock case so that you can see the effect of it. And despite the fact I was concerned that it perhaps was a bit too amateurish, it actually doesn't look too bad. It's got a wonderful glint to it from the gold. The only thing I haven't done yet is to put a clear coat over the top of it, and I'm debating on whether I should do that or not. But it probably ought to have it just to stabilise everything. It is a very fussy dial, and the hands are actually quite difficult to see because of the black background. I put them on just to have a look to see how it appeared. And the other thing is that the chapter ring is missing a set of divisions on the inside which would normally be there, but actually it's not that noticeable, particularly as there's a band of the gold fitted or applied to the centre. The overall effect I'm very pleased with, and I'll just open this so you can perhaps see it a little bit more clearly. So that's quite a long job, but it's good fun doing the gilding. I'd certainly do it again if I had another project to do that I was deciding whether to gild it or not. The only thing is, a wooden surface, the better you prepare it, the better it goes on, so you really don't want to have grain where you're rubbing things on. And I filled this with car body filler first before spraying it, but even so it's still slightly rough in places. So there we have it. That's the face and the dial finished. The clock case is finished, and I think my next job's going to be making up the pendulum, which is one of Harrison's inventions again. The pendulum is the first compensated pendulum that was devised for compensating for temperature and movement, that is, and it has a series of brass rods and a series of steel rods, and it's the movement between the two that counteract each other. So that's the face, and as I say, I'm pleased with that. The only thing I'm slightly not quite sure what to do with is the chapter ring, where I could refinish it. I've got wax for filling the numerals and the divisions up, and I've also got some silvering compound, and perhaps what I might do is clean off the current varnish and re-varnish it and see what it looks like. But that aside, I'm happy with that now. It really looks quite striking.